Notice how the sun changes from circular to being smushed down horizontally, back to perfectly circular, then smushed across vertically, and then back again. This is not how the sun usually looks or behaves in person, or in genuine footage of the phenomenon from the Arctic.
Now, bear in mind, this was shot with an Insta360, which has two 180-degree fisheye lenses facing in opposite directions. So, when the sun, or any object for that matter, circles all the way around the camera, at some point it has to move to the very edge of one of the fisheye lenses, then cross over the overlap between the lenses, and then it winds up at the very edge of the next lens. So it's naturally going to create distortion. Now, if you watch the sun in the 360 video of me leaving the 757, you can see as I am turning to face in different directions, the sun is obviously moving around the frame of the camera, so it's crossing over between the two lenses. And you can see the sun changing shape. And this is real-time video. The sun is not actually changing shape in the sky. It's merely distortion caused by the 360-degree fisheye lenses. And I can demonstrate this very easily. If I take one of the lights in my studio here, we'll say that this is representing the sun. If I then hold up my Insta360 and I rotate it round, you can see the shape of the light changing in the 360 footage, but the light itself is not physically changing shape. And I've also had a few people bring up the fact that in the same footage you can see the mountains distort. Again, this is just a characteristic of an Insta360 that can be easily demonstrated. And if you watch the time-lapse that I shot of the sun with the solar filter, you can see the sun doesn't actually change shape in the sky. And now, last, but by no means least, let's tackle not only the most recent claim that I've seen, but probably, frankly, the most insane one. And it again comes from King Nico. Yes, apparently I performed some sort of Masonic ritual with a left-footed boot. The funny thing is the only reason that I'd put that left boot under the table is because I'd been using the right one for the rest of the time that we were there. Before we even landed in Antarctica, we'd been told to put our polar gear on. The polar trousers, the polar boots, and then I put the coat on once we'd landed. All of them are rated down to minus 70 degrees C. Except once I got into the tucker, I pretty quickly warmed up, and at the main camp there was no wind, because they put the camp there specifically because it's quite sheltered by the mountains, and the sun was beating down on us. So very quickly we all shed the polar layers, which in reality are more designed to deal with blizzards. So once we got up to halfway point, we took all the polar gear with us in case the weather turned bad, but it wasn't actually cold enough at the time to need it. But I'd noticed that the polar boots were heavily insulated, and also the fact that they're black, they would absorb heat from being in direct sunlight. So I thought they were a perfect option for putting the power banks in, because batteries notoriously don't like cold. So I figured, keep them in the insulated boot that is black, in direct sunlight, it's gaining a lot of heat from that, throw in a couple of hand warmers, and then put the insulated pouch from my water bottle onto the top of the boot to try and keep all the heat trapped in so that the batteries would keep going for longer. So I just grabbed one of the boots and put the batteries in. It turned out I'd picked up the right boot. Upon seeing me do this, Will and Mark, who were setting up Will's phone for a live stream for Candace Owens' channel, decided the boot was actually a great idea for storing the battery pack in, so they took the remaining boot that was on the pile, which was my left one. Now, their stream unfortunately only lasted a few hours into the early hours of the morning before there was an issue with Starlink that caused the stream to stop. It also caused the stream that MC Toon was doing at the same time to stop, and they couldn't get the Rumble stream back online for Candace Owens. So they ended up just leaving it. So later on, I then decided I was going to do a stream of my own at the end of the 24-hour period to mark the occasion of reaching 24 hours of recording the sun. And one of the things I wanted to do on my stream was explain the setup that I'd been using, which included explaining why there was a random boot on the ground with a bunch of wires coming out of it.
أنا حضرت هذا البث يا جماعة، كلامه صحيح.
So I wanted to show the amount of insulation that was inside the boot. But obviously, the right boot was over there by the tripod holding all the power banks and the cables in, which meant I only had the left boot spare since it was no longer being used for Candace's live stream. So I'd already been and got it from the tripod and threw it back on the pile inside. So when I was then preparing for the live stream, I knew I was going to be setting up on that table outside. So in preparation, I went and got the boot and placed it under the table so that I knew where it was. Absolutely nothing to do with masons in the slightest. Well, I think that's probably enough for this video.
ماسونية يعني. أنا هحط لكم الرابط أسفل هذا الفيديو يا جماعة. كده هو رد على الشبهة لماذا الشمس مشوهة، ورد على واحد من الناس المشككين في التجربة يتهموا بالطقوس الماسونية. والفيديو مفيد إن شاء الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.